Hello and welcome to Research Thursday. I'm your host, Dr. Richard Harris, and today we're going to be talking about a study that's causing a lot of controversy right now, and it's in regards to one of our favorite and a lot of people's who in the holistic world favorite wellness tools, and that is fasting. So let's just dive right on into this study, and I want to specifically talk about one of the results. And so in this study, they were looking at, hey, does fasting cause fat loss? So they had people do a time restricted eating protocol, our favorite 16-8. So they ate from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. That was their eating window. And for 12 weeks and looked at a control group who just had ate whenever they want to eat. Was there a difference in fat loss? And so what they did find was that the group that did the time restricted eating, there was about almost 4 pound a loss of weight in this group. Now, the controversial thing is they found out that 65% of this, about 65% that mass was lean mass loss. It was actually muscle loss. Usually when people are losing weight, you can have a 20 to 30% up to that weight loss be muscle. Now, there's some caveats with this. This study did not look at their intake of protein. So that's huge. Usually if you restrict your meals, you're not going to get enough protein. And unless you're doing it the correct way. So when we coach people on fasting, we always say get your protein first because it's so important to maintain your muscle mass. And so, if we're in a low protein state, you're going to lose muscle mass. And so not measuring their macros with this study is a huge problem because I'm betting that a lot of the people who were in this study were not getting enough protein because most Americans already don't get enough protein. Our standard American diet is way too high in carbohydrates, bad fats, and too low in protein. So that's one of the things that we always do. We always make sure we try to conserve our protein intake. It's so important. I always tell my clients, get your proteins first. So that's the first and most important thing with the study and why I see people freaking out. Oh my gosh, fasting causes muscle loss. No, you cannot take that conclusion from this study because they didn't measure a significant portion of what is involved with protein synthesis, and that's protein intake. Another thing I found was interesting, and this may also point to why there was more muscle loss, was that the people doing the fasting became more sedentary. They took less steps throughout the day. I believe it was around 2,800 steps was the difference between the fasting group. So there was not as much exercise being done. They were being more sedentary. And this is probably because when you start fasting, there's some changes there and with electrolyte concentrations. And so that's why we always recommend electrolytes, specifically Replay. Replay electrolytes are our favorite electrolyte. They're clinical grade. You can go check out my podcast on Replay. Use promo code DRHarrisMD for a discount. That's a reason why we tell people to take these things because you can feel more sluggish when you start doing time restricted eating or fasting. You're not getting enough electrolytes. Typically people get used to this. Another thing I found was interesting on this study was that people were fasting. They used Oura rings, which I have. I love my Oura ring. They got more deep sleep. Their sleep efficiency increased, and their sleep latency decreased. I thought that was pretty interesting. So the people who were doing the fasting, they were the time restricted eating, there was beneficial changes in sleep, and that's probably because that they weren't eating before bed. And that can cause an increase in your blood sugar, which can make it more difficult to sleep. Also, a lot of people don't know when you eat, your body temperature goes up. There's what we call the thermogenic effect of food. You get heat generation when you're metabolizing food. And so that increase in body temperature is a signal to wake up. And so when we go to sleep, our body temperatures are supposed to drop, not increase. So the time restricted eating group actually got some better markers of sleep. And I thought that was really interesting. And I thought that was really cool that they use an Oura ring to track. And I'm hoping that a lot of other studies will do the same with some of these sleep wearables I track sleep with an Oura Ring, and I actually made some adjustments in my sleep cycle and my sleep schedule because of it, and I have seen a dramatic improvement. Okay, so what is the take home from this study? We know that there's lots of other studies that outline the benefits of intermittent fasting. If you want to know the benefits of intermittent fasting, time restricted eating, check out my podcast on it, Strive for Great Health podcast. I talk about that in depth in the podcast. Why I wanted to mention this study is when people are now coming out and saying, oh, fasting causes muscle loss. No, there's plenty of other studies that show it does not. Plenty of good studies. This study did not look at protein intake. So you cannot do a fasting study where you're not looking at macronutrient intake. Because if you're just cutting calories, or if you're cutting up the amount of protein down, you are going to get muscle loss. But we've seen it plenty of times where people are still active, still working out when they fast. I was with a buddy last weekend. He was talking about he lost 40 pounds of fat, did not lose any muscle whatsoever. Because he had muscle, he still worked out. He was just had a lot of body fat. So he lost all that weight without any change in muscle mass. And he did this via DEXA scans. So it is possible. You just have to do it under the right conditions. And this is why you need someone who knows about this stuff to coach you through it. Because just like anything, you can do these things wrong and they can be harmful. I talk about fasting can be a double-edged sword. If you do it wrong, it's harmful. If you do it right, it's extremely beneficial. So go check out the podcast. If you're looking for more help with the fasting regimen, we'd love to help you out. It's in our wellness programs as well. theghwellness.com. Click programs at the top. I know this has been a little bit longer than our usual sessions, but I thought this was really important to come out here and talk about this study and talk about the pitfalls with this study and why there were pitfalls, and to not be afraid of muscle loss while fasting. I fast. I have not lost any muscle because I keep my protein intake up. I stay active. I take my electrolytes. I do fasting the correct way. All right. Thank you all, and God bless.